And where's the timer? Who's the timer?
She's right there at the end.
Oh, okay, good. I see you, okay. Well, welcome everybody. You're our first group, and I know everybody's excited, and all of us really enjoyed doing this. So let me introduce myself. My name is Cam Fehrenbach. I'm a U.S. Magistrate Judge.
I'm Lorraine Alderman. I'm a Clark County School District Board of Trustees member.
I'm Barbara Buckley. I'm the former Speaker of the Nevada State Assembly and the Director of the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada.
And I'm David Harden. I'm also judge of the
Okay, and now, did you want to introduce yourselves? I think that's next, right?
I'm Sydney Lawton.
Lawton?
I'm John Watson.
I'm Chase Taylor.
I'm Sarah Pappas.
Okay, great. Now, we're unit 4, right? Okay, yes. And we're picking the third question. How have the values and principles embodied in the Constitution shaped American institutions and practices? And then we're doing question 3. If every compromise is taken as a defeat, that must be overturned, and if no healing generosity is ever shown to defeated rivals, the best contrived constitution in the world would not succeed. Now this is a quote from Bernard Bailyn in To Begin the World Anew. And from that quote, we'd like you to answer this question. Do you agree or disagree with this opinion of an American historian? Why or why not? And as sub-questions, in what ways, if any, do committee hearings held by the House and Senate facilitate compromise? And the second sub-question, some members of Congress blame the media for making premature judgments about, quote, do-nothing Congresses and covering high-profile issues that provoke legislative conflict. Evaluate that claim.
Andrew Carnegie once stated, "Compromise is usually a sign of weakness or admission of defeat. Strong men don't compromise." Unfortunately, that is the view most politicians have in Congress today. In order to get past current gridlock and govern effectively, consensus is absolutely necessary. Therefore, we agree with scholar Bernard Bailyn's statement that, if every compromise is taken as a defeat that must be overturned, the best constitution in the world would not succeed.
Our country was founded on compromise. The framers of the Constitution combined the New Jersey, New York, and Virginia plans in the Great Compromise to form our system of government. In 1820, the Missouri Compromise balanced the number of free states and slave states. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 repealed this and left the choice of being a slave territory to popular sovereignty. The resulting Civil War proves Bailyn's thesis.
During Franklin Roosevelt's presidency, there were many legislative compromises. Social Security was significantly altered. Professor Bruce Schulman has noted the final product scaled down all FDR's original ambitions. In that era, Congress at least attempted to solve its problems in a bipartisan way. Today, that is hardly the case. In 2010, Republican Senator Alan K. Simpson worked with Democratic Senator Erskine Bowles on President Obama's Debt Reduction Commission to produce a plan for solving the nation's debt problems. It is consistently praised as an act of bipartisan compromise, but like most other bills with that title, it has not been acted upon.
Unfortunately, most committee hearings held by the House and the Senate do not facilitate any compromise and instead serve as means to divide them further. There are 4 distinct types of hearing: confirmation, oversight, investigative, and legislative. Usually, investigative hearings are the type that are most likely to produce bipartisan reform. After the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill, a response came in the CLEAR Act, which made it harder for oil companies to drill offshore and put new security measures in place. Legislative hearings have promoted compromise in the past, but do so less today. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 was only passed after committee hearings produced bipartisan support for regulation.
A 2006 analysis published in Political Research Quarterly by Professor Glenn Parker showed that most committees are either more divided than the larger membership in the House, or there is a greater consensus within the committee than within non-committee members. This division, both within the committees and within the larger Congress, make compromise from legislative hearings a rare result. In the hearing for the Internet Copyright Regulation Bills, SOPA and PIPA, major Internet companies sent representatives to lobby against their passage. Instead of leading to a compromise solution, the bills were dropped. This lack of compromise contributes to the negative view of Congress seen today.
A 2013 public policy polling study revealed that 9% of the country felt Congress was doing a good job. Many Congresspeople blame faulty media coverage for creating a perception of failure. However, we feel that media is justified in these criticisms. There is a clear lack of action on even the most basic of congressional duties. With fewer judicial confirmations, district court vacancies have risen by 40% since 2009. A new budget resolution hasn't been passed in the last 4 years. In fact, the 112th Congress passed nearly 4 times fewer laws than the actual do-nothing Congress under President Harry Truman.
Others claim the media provokes legislative conflict in the way it covers issues. In reality, it produces meaningful discussion and spurs legislative action. In 1904, muckraker Ida Tarbell published The History of the Standard Oil Company, which applied pressure to make the Supreme Court break up the Standard Oil monopoly. The role of the media remains the same today. With extensive coverage of the 16 mass shootings in 2012, Washington is finally questioning the effectiveness of current gun laws and debating further action.
As the influential economist John Maynard Keynes once said, when the final result is expected to be a compromise, it is often prudent to start from an extreme position. This mentality is pervasive in Washington today. Unfortunately, compromise is rarely the result. In place, excessive posturing, ineffective hearings, and legislative inaction prevent the best constitution in the world from succeeding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I need to now, as the chairman, I get to ask the first follow-up question. And our question is, in what ways, if any, do political parties function in Congress, and how do they promote or hinder compromise?
Well, political parties are sometimes referred to as the organizational machines behind Congress. They allow a lot of structure to take place. If we didn't have parties, we wouldn't have a leadership structure. We wouldn't have committees, in a sense. We wouldn't have that kind of mechanized system to get bills passed in a reasonable way.
Additionally, in conference committees, it's bicameral, so there's going to be members from both parties in there passing bills together effectively.
However, as James Madison stated in Federalist 62, no laws or resolutions can now be passed without first a concurrence of the people and then a concurrence of the state. And the parties make for concurrences to be less often and more bipartisan reform to happen. I mean, not bipartisan, partisanship, so that no concurrence is made as often.
This partisanship causes a massive gridlock that can greatly slow down the effectiveness in Congress. And while Congress was designed to be a slow body that looked at every bill and analyzed it and saw all of its effects, they've become so slow-moving that they've only passed one bill in this session, and another one was passed by the Senate to simply move the debt ceiling to a later date.
Okay. Many Americans are concerned about the decline in civility in our political discourse. Has the tendency to demonize opponents made it more difficult to reach consensus on critical issues or to compromise? Please explain your position.
Absolutely. This kind of vitriolic attitude we have in our country today, which is espoused by media outlets like Fox News and MSNBC, makes any kind of political discourse much harder to have. For example, if you turn on Fox News yesterday, they were talking about how the president's administration recently changed some of its procedures on how it's going to require insurance companies and private institutions to offer birth control. However, it was not portrayed as an act of compromise. It was not portrayed as an olive leaf, but instead a shortcoming of the administration and something is further dividing us. So this kind of framework that we're looking at everything in just serves to divide us further.
However, the use of committee hearings can help the media push the congressmen to reform to their ideas. For example, the SOPA and PIPA bills, major internet companies such as Google and Microsoft came and expressed their displeasure for the bill, which caused the bill to be dropped and them to be satisfied.
Members of Congress who don't learn the art of compromise usually find themselves at the margins of the legislative process. What examples from history can you cite to substantiate that statement, and what examples contradict it?
Well, George Sebelius is a professor at the University of Michigan today. He has a degree in statistical mathematics and a PhD in political science, and he came up with a theory called veto players. The idea is the more people in Congress that have the ability to veto a certain piece of legislation, to control what is compromised on and what is not compromised on, the more things stay the same, the more policies don't change. And in modern society, that claim that you made just simply doesn't exist because there are so many veto players. Simply, the leadership has too much control over the process, the committees aren't willing to make compromises, and the kind of hyper-partisanship attitude isn't getting anything done.
Do you mind repeating what the statement is, please?
Members of Congress who don't learn the art of compromise usually find themselves at the margins of the legislative process. What examples from history substantiate that and what contradict it?
Well, we can look at the actual creation of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There's a group who were not going to ratify the Constitution unless a Bill of Rights was included. So that shows that I feel that that was a successful compromise and that it worked out for the best for both groups.
You could also look at all the slave compromises throughout our history, such as the Missouri Compromise and the Kansas-Nebraska Acts. And those, although they weren't the best compromises because they just pushed off the Civil War, they still were compromises from very extreme positions.
You can also look to the Compromise of 1877, which ended Reconstruction. And while it took forever for the end of Reconstruction to come, it was finally the parties coming together to finally get action done and move forward from our previous mistakes to go on and compromise and reach new heights.
I'd like to ask about our role as citizens. What can we do on behalf of our elected representatives to encourage compromise in the legislative process?
We as citizens can attend public committee hearings and we can offer ideas and we can sit in and we can see what's going on. And this is a great way to be involved in the art of compromise in our government.
In addition, there's a recent example of that from the Occupy movement. Occupy SEC was a group that sprung up last year after the SEC came out with a series of new regulations for that body. They offered a myriad of public comments, allowed a lot of changes to be made, and had the people actually getting a real effect on what kind of regulations were passed. So that kind of action, that kind of public comment is really essential, and any citizen can get on federalregister.gov and make a public comment today.
Another way would be through elections, because if you're not happy with how your congressman has failed or not compromised, you can choose not to re-elect them in the next election.
You could also write directly to your representative from your district. You can write a letter expressing your beliefs and send it to your representative to tell them or give them an idea of what their district needs.
You know, this is so interesting. Hearing you talk about communicating and the internet and whatnot, you know, for those of us who grew up before all this instant communication happened, I'd like your view of it. Do you think all this instant communication, social media, you know, Occupy, go on a website, do you think that furthers partisanship, or does it mitigate it, or if it does further partisanship, which frankly I think it does, do you think there's a positive balance? Because we're really talking about the First Amendment here, our communication. What do you think of it? Is it good or bad, or which or why?
Well, media definitely has further partisanship. You know, you'll have people who are saying this news station is Republican or this news station is Democratic, and that's not good because news stations are very one-sided. You want to look to the news to get information. You want to be informed. You know, and with everything so twisted with their party, that it's hard to find the facts that you need to know when voting.
But in the world of the internet, things have changed in a rather substantial way. You can look to Twitter as a great example. 100 of 100 senators are on Twitter today, and 398 of 435 representatives are on Twitter today. That's 90% of the entire delegation of Congress using social media. So there's a clear connection between our policymakers to the citizens, allowing us to have a connection to them, allowing them to interact with a much more democratic process.
I'd like to return to Speaker Buckley's question about legislators who might put themselves on the margin. Can you think of any contemporary examples, either nationally or within our state, whether it be group, caucus, or individual legislator who has made himself or herself marginalized because of the failure to compromise?
Well, one modern example has to be the issue of immigration in Congress. Many people are debating today about a bipartisan regulation framework that's created by 4 Republican senators and 4 Democratic senators and has, in theory, been endorsed by the president. Some of the more extreme members of the Republican caucus don't like this idea and aren't willing to support it, meaning that this kind of legislation isn't really going to gain favor from them, but still has strong bipartisan support, at least in theory, in the chamber right now.
Okay, 1 minute. I have a zinger. How do you think the Tea Party has impacted the ability of Congress to compromise?
Well, rather negatively, unfortunately. The Tea Party's ideology is often compared to the idea of the actual 80th do-nothing Congress, the idea of being obstructionist as much as possible. And that kind of idea doesn't really allow for many pieces of legislation to be passed. 200 bills were passed in the 112th Congress, and we've only had one this year that paid for something that we should have done last year. Like, we aren't getting a lot of compromises done, and that kind of inaction has definitely come as a response to the 2010 midterm election.
Going back to the topic of Twitter and modern communications, if members of Congress are on their Twitter accounts and sometimes tweeting about making snarky statements about each other's bills, how does that promote or affect compromise? We're done.
Well, you know what? That was a good note to end on. We can all contemplate that as the day goes by. Okay, well, thank you very much. I thought you guys did a great job.
Thank you, Leon High School. You did a very good job.
Yeah.
Folks,
Oh, well, wait,
we
we have to make a
agree.
few comments.
Oh,
That's right.
sorry.
So I wanted to say, you know, I thought you guys did a great job. Your presentation was down to the, you know, I think you were about 3 seconds of the end. Obviously, a lot of work. You answered the questions, and you did a very excellent prepared presentation. And I thought the comments were great too, answering those. And I especially, as a federal judge, appreciate your awareness of the need to confirm federal judges' nominations.
Objection leading. I loved how you tied in the most recent news. It's so easy to get caught up on what you've prepped on. And then to bring in things that have just happened this week was excellent. And I knew you were doing well when I could see, I believe, are you the teacher? Can we give? Oh, the teacher's over here. Oh, okay. Well, you got a coach or somebody, because he was back there going, yeah, right on. So nice job and good balance and great eye contact and all those good things.
I think you played off each other very well, coming into each other's rescue and piping in very, very well. I also really enjoyed the bringing in the very recent examples, the birth control, the immigration compromise. It showed you balance the historical perspective with current day events.
Well, Reno High School, we have a love-hate relationship. I love to listen to you, and you hate my comments. So
That's not true.
So I'm going to do differently.
We appreciate that.
I told you I
That
talked
was
about
I met Mr. Clark 5 or 6 years ago when he was introducing me to people into Reno High School. And it's amazing how far your school has come. You're every year is better than the last. And if not now, you will soon be a powerhouse in this competition. I thought you did a remarkable job. The competition is won or lost in the second phase. I felt that you were testifying, that you were teaching me during your prepared remarks. My constructive comment would be, and I'll have more if you have the privilege of moving forward, I'll come meet with you. But be careful when you answer the questions, that you listen to them first and then you answer them specifically. Sometimes we are so prepared that we're over-prepared, and we reach into our pocket for our talking points. Answer the questions that are asked specifically, and I think you'll be effective. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Oh, it's not your fault.
Thank you so much.
Great job. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Yes, Winstar song! Nice job. Smile. Smile. Good job. Oh my goodness. You guys did awesome. It's done. Your passion process like boom. I'm ready for you to go, this is not working!
The judges for continuing throwing out questions.
Hey, real quick. Don't let the judges ask questions until you have answered them. Okay? If they're gonna say something, you interrupt them first. It's your responsibility to answer their question, not move on to the next question. Okay? You guys are fine. You guys are awesome.
Bye.
Bye, you guys. Bye. That's awesome. That's so cool.
Make sure you listen to the questions. If you guys are the second or third, not the first person to speak, really go back to make sure you have that question down the card. The first person might not have an example, so it may not have immediately fully answered the question. Make sure you read the essence of the question. In your case, when that's a speech, people can have quotes and examples and like that. Make sure that we wrap it up with actual answers. Sometimes the question about whether our partisanship is unfair, well, should you reiterate listen, because a lot of things are all you're used to yeah, do it right there. You should have, yeah, just do that there.
You guys on time this morning?
So those are the first person.
You're on time this morning?
Yeah.
On time this morning? On time this morning?
Oh, yes, we were, yes, we were. But not 15 minutes early.
Nice job. And throw it right back. We appreciate your comment. I was waiting for the science committee guy. Todd Aiken. Or Grover Northwest.
I think they were looking for two. Oh, yeah, no, that lady.
Oh. That's okay.
Yeah.
How do you guys like sitting that close to me too? Good. I think they get in their kitchen, don't you? You guys are smiling, having fun.
Big eyes. Conversation.
Jack Reed FM voice. That is radio voice. You got 7 questions. That's good. 7 questions. That's good. Hey.
Well, but all the questions were.
I don't answer that off.
No, you didn't.